Alright, so I'm going to be diagnosing and fixing an oxygen sensor code today. And I'm going to go through the steps on how to diagnose what's wrong with it. I'm just going to pull up the code here first so we can see what's going on with it. Alright, so I got P0158, that's the oxygen sensor code, bank 2, sensor 2. And there's an evap code there too. I'm going to fix that in another video. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the live data. And I'm going to see what the voltage is for that sensor. So on the bottom here is the oxygen sensor volts for bank 2 sensor 2. And it sets a code if it's over 3.7 volts. And as you can see, it is over 3.7 volts. So there is an issue with that. Okay, so this is bank 2, sensor 2. I just unplugged the connector here. And I'm gonna check the voltage at the bottom right pin. And I just want to make sure that it doesn't have more than 5.2 volts. Also, you have to check for the voltage there while the car is running. So don't touch the exhaust, you might burn yourself. Alright, so I measured the voltage at the terminal I just showed you. It had 1.7 volts. So it's alright as long as it has under 5.2 volts. So I'm going to move on to the next step now. The next step is to undo the connectors at the PCM, and then we're going to measure voltage down at the connector on the oxygen sensor again. So I'm going to unplug the connector into the PCM. So I just undid the 13mm bolt here so I could lift this up and get access to the connectors easier. And I popped the red locking tabs upwards, and then now I'm going to press the clip in and pull the clips off, all 3 of them. Okay, so after disconnecting the PCM, I'm going to measure the voltage on the bottom left pin there. Okay, so after you measure for voltage there, you should see 0 voltage. If there's any voltage there, then that means it's shorted to power somewhere and you gotta fix that. But I got no voltage, so I'm gonna move on to the next step. So I'm gonna put the PCM back in, plug it all in, put that back into place, and then we'll move on. Okay, so the next step would be to make a jumper wire and connect together the bottom 2 pins on this connector. So 2 pins at the bottom there. So I have an old oxygen sensor connector that I'm going to use. I'm going to plug it in and I'm going to jump those 2 terminals together. And then we're going to read the voltage on the scan tool and see what it says. Alright, so as you can see, I got a wire going to each of the bottom pins there. So I'm going to twist these 2 wires together. And then we're going to check what the scan tool says. Okay, so with the ignition on, engine not running, I'm going to check the data here. bank 2 sensor 2. And it's 2.49 volts. Alright, so it should be between 2.3 and 2.7 volts. So what that is showing is that the oxygen sensor is bad. So I'm going to replace the oxygen sensor and then we'll check the data again. Alright, so I just got back from the store and I got a new oxygen sensor. So I'm going to use an oxygen sensor socket to remove the old oxygen sensor, and then I'm going to put the new one in and plug in the connector. And then I'm going to start the car up, let it warm up a little bit, and then we'll check the scan tool for the data. Alright, so I got the new sensor installed and I plugged it into the connector there. So now I'm going to start the car, let it warm up, and then we're going to look at the data and see if it fixed the issue there. Okay, so before starting the car, I got to erase the codes. Alright, so I'm going to start the car and let it warm up, and then we'll take a peek at the data list. So it looks like that oxygen sensor is working properly now. All that's left is go for a few test drives and that code shouldn't come back up. You could always just throw an oxygen sensor in when it throws the code, but sometimes there could be a short or an open in the wiring. So it's really up to you if you just want to throw a sensor in and see what happens.